It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Opening arguments, it looks like, start on Monday in the Trump New York City criminal trial. And joining us for the very latest on all of this is Gregg Jarrett, of course, Fox News legal analyst. Also, his book is The Constitution of the United States and Other Patriotic Documents. Greg, what do you make of this jury? And can he get a fair jury in New York City?
Witches had a better chance of a fair trial in Salem than Donald Trump in Manhattan. And
that's a good one.
Write that one down.
That's a good one. We're gonna steal that from you. Go ahead.
Feel free. I already told Sean Hannity that line. Jury selection proved this. You know, when they were asked, a flood of people, the vast majority, said, no, I cannot and will not be fair to Donald Trump. They don't want to be. But how many of those who said otherwise are lying with a hidden agenda of getting on the jury to convict? You know, Manhattan is, as you know, an inherently hostile venue for the accused. And in a politically charged case against an outspoken political candidate that's hated, especially there, these jurors are predisposed and the outcome is preordained. This case absolutely should have been moved elsewhere, where the jury pool would have been more balanced. But Bragg opposed it, so did Judge Merchan, which in my judgment is evidence that they know this prosecution is legally weak, if not absurd, but they're counting on a prejudiced jury to convict.
You know, did you see this, Gregg Jarrett? And I'm curious, you got a couple great attorneys here also in the studio. This was surprising to me, Greg, that the prosecution is actually withholding the witness list to the defense, and the judge is saying that's okay, and they're claiming that they don't want Trump to say something about these people on social media. I mean, how is that American? I mean, that like to say, okay, surprise, here's the person we're going to put on the stand.
Yeah, I mean, it turns justice on its head. You exchange the witness list so each side can do some preparation to know in advance, not just what the evidence is, but who is going to present the evidence on the witness stand. So this is yet another example of the hyper anti-Trump bias by Judge Juan Merchan, who should have recused himself because his adult daughter is making money off of her father's case, soliciting donations, and already made $93 million for herself and her clients. And she has a financial and economic interest in the outcome of the case under the rules of judicial conduct that is absolutely a requirement for recusal, and yet Merchan ignores it.
And Gregg Jarrett, Judge Weinberg has a question for you.
You're absolutely right. Merchan absolutely positively has a conflict here. At the very least, he has an overwhelming appearance of impropriety. I want to shift gears. I want you to talk about the cases in the Supreme Court on the so-called obstruction charges, where they're going to be ruling on that and the impact that may have on the charges against President Trump, Greg.
Well, it's pretty clear that most of the justices, including Roberts, were not buying into the Biden DOJ argument that this documents obstruction statute applies to a congressional proceeding, which it doesn't, because no documents were involved. And, you know, some of the justices during arguments openly worried that this statute will be weaponized against a variety of political activities if they endorse it. They're clearly going to reverse the lower court decision because the plain meaning of the law makes it a crime to destroy or hide records. Yet in hundreds, more than 300 J6 cases, Merrick Garland's prosecutors mangled the law and claimed, it applies to protesters interrupting Congress, which it does not.
So, Greg, doesn't that affect also the Trump case, too? I mean, there's some big implications. No, yeah.
I think that's what Greg is saying. The fact is that this is a spoliation of evidence situation. And it's about documents.
And it goes right to those other ones, right? That's a big deal. It goes directly
against the Trump case.
It's a very big deal.
And Greg is right. Hundreds of these people should have their convictions set aside, and Trump should have this dismissed against him on the obstruction. Greg?
Yeah, it blows a hole in half of Jack Smith's J6 case against Trump, because there are 4 counts, and 2 of them are this cockamamie interpretation of the obstruction statute. And you knock out those 2, that leaves 2 remaining, and those are, I think, defensible by Trump and his lawyers.
Yeah, I think so too. It's going to be interesting. What do you think is going to happen, by the way, with this case and the calendar too, real quick, Greg, because we got as we're talking about all these other, you got the Jack Smith's case out there. This one is going to go maybe 4 to 6 weeks, with the opening arguments on Monday. Do you think we'll see any other case make the light of day before Election Day?
I don't see how. The immunity issue is also to be determined by the U.S. Supreme Court. That would come down in June, depending upon, how they rule. That affects Trump's ability to defend himself. And, in many ways, you have to start from square one. It's impossible for that case, I think, to be had and tried before the election. Impossible, I think.
All right. Well, Gregg Jarrett, thank you very much.
Greg.
We're going to remember the which one. That was a good one.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Grainger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.